What's going on, everyone? My name is Luke, aka the Horror Nerd, and welcome back to YouTube's Horror Section. So, I know that I have been gone for quite a long time. Um, as you guys probably already know, school season is literally right around the corner. And I've just been busy with a bunch of life stuff. Just trying to get things done, just trying to, keep my motivation to, keep on working towards things that I really should be spending more times working towards, to be honest. I've just been 2025 has just been one of those years where I'm getting stuff done, but at the same time I'm also still falling behind on other things. So I've just been, locked in trying to focus on getting stuff done in my personal life. So I haven't really had a whole lot of time to really game or do YouTube stuff, just been too busy. But after school season, uh, after school season comes around and, once I get more things done, that should give me more free time to do, other stuff like hobbies. And of course, my channel is one of those hobbies. I don't really consider my YouTube channel to be anything more than that. I just like to make content every now and then. Um, and I also, of course, do appreciate the following that I have gained here on YouTube's Horror Section from you guys, my fans, my friends, everyone who has supported me on this channel, and those who enjoy my content, and also those who enjoy my style of videos. The way I just kind of sit here and just talk to you guys in my discussion video. So I appreciate those who enjoy my style of video making. It's all I can do for now. Like, I literally just use my phone to record. I don't got none of that fancy editing software or cameras or anything like that. I'm resourceful. I work with what I have. So yeah. Anyways, this is probably going to be the longest discussion video here on this channel because I've got quite a few things that I want to unpack here. So I hope you guys enjoy, and this will also be my last video talking about asymmetrical horror for quite a while. I don't want to milk the topic. But yeah, anyways, now that all of that stuff is out of the way, let's get straight into the topic of tonight's discussion video right here on YouTube's Horror Section. Now, you guys are probably well already aware of the fact that Gun Media is officially working on a Halloween game. The game also has a confirmed release date, so for those of you who are interested in actually playing this game and are excited for this game, and by all means, for those who are positive about asymmetrical horror games in the future and even beyond, and for those who just like asymmetrical horror games, even though Gun Media and other studios are constantly fucking them up, more power to you for being able to remain positive, and for those who could actually still enjoy these games, because ever since Texas Chainsaw, I have just given up all hope on the asymmetrical horror game genre, to be honest. But anyways, the game is coming out in 2026. I don't think I saw a specific month, but mark your calendar, I guess, if you're actually hopeful or excited or both for this upcoming Halloween game by Gun Media, the same publishers behind Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th. And the game is also being made by IllFonic, the same guys who made that horrible Killer Clowns game and the Ghostbusters game, which most of you guys probably don't even know what the name is. So yeah, and also that weird Predator game, that weird Predator game. I think it's called Apex Predator, Chris Hansen something. I don't know. Just that weird fucking Predator game. I think it's called Hunting Grounds. Yeah, anyways, this is a genre that I am just getting so incredibly tired of. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, keep in mind that everything that I say in this video is my opinion, okay? So for all of you angry little Jimmies who like to leave your nasty comments down below in people's videos that you don't agree with when they are giving their opinion, which does not have to mean shit to you, like, by all means, if my opinion makes you angry, then go ahead and type away in the comments and make yourself look like an asshole. I don't care, but I just think it's really immature. My opinion is my opinion. So for those of you who actually like Gun Media and like the games that they have already published and helped create, that's fine. I mean, you're one of the people who is contributing to this tired genre continuing to live on, but I don't care. I can't really control how people live their lives, spend their money, or how they choose to, have their own opinion. I can't control none of that. So let's just keep civilized. I know that we live in a society where being civilized is very hard for people, despite how normal and easy it is to be civilized. I guess people have lost that ability. Just try not to be an asshole, I guess. It's my opinion, just some random ass dude on the internet. Anyways, now that disclaimer is out of the way, let's talk about why I fucking hate this genre of games. Now, the thing about the asymmetrical horror genre is I used to love this genre once upon a time. Of course, I've played Dead by Daylight, the one that has the monopoly over this genre. The monopoly it has is because, every other game that comes after Dead by Daylight will always die under Dead by Daylight. We all know why. I'll explain that in a minute. But Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th, those to me were the most successful asymmetrical horror games to ever be released. Every game after has always failed or was never able to live up to the expectations that the developers gave to us. They gave us those expectations, those high expectations with the concept of the games that they were making. Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead. Only one out of those three games was actually able to live up to the expectations, while TCM and Evil Dead, both of those games had a shit ton of potential, especially Evil Dead. I remember playing Evil Dead on launch, and I thought it was amazing. I thought it was very fun. Of course, it had some problems which could have easily been fixed if the dev team was more dedicated, and also had less laziness running throughout every fiber of their body. But yeah, honestly, Evil Dead had more potential than TCM, And that's the problem with all of these developers. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The biggest reason why every asymmetrical horror game doesn't even live longer than 2 years before being shut down is because of the incompetence of the developer. They're not dedicated enough. They're way too incompetent, they're way too lazy, and they have their focus set on the wrong things when they even are focusing on the damn thing. But anyways, like I was saying before, Friday the 13th was a success, and unfortunately so is Dead by Daylight. You guys already know that I really don't have a lot of nice things to say about Dead by Daylight. In my opinion, Dead by Daylight is still a garbage game. I still think Dead by Daylight sucks. I think Behavior Interactive are some of the most incompetent of the developers that make these games in the first place. The Gun Media and IllFonic are only slightly more incompetent than Behavior, and I've said this before as well, but the only reason why Dead by Daylight hasn't died yet is because the player base is way too addicted, they're way too obsessed with the game, and the game also gets updates that just fuels the addiction and obsession that the Dead by Daylight community has for that game. And Dead by Daylight addiction is a real thing. Like, so many people have tried quitting Dead by Daylight and they've always failed. For me personally, I don't need to quit Dead by Daylight because I simply just lost interest in it. I play it like every once in a blue moon at this point. So, I don't have that problem, but I'm getting off topic now. Fucking ADHD. Friday the 13th was also a tragic success in my eyes because if it wasn't for the lawsuit by Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller and all that other bullshit that was surrounding the IP of Friday the 13th, I'm pretty sure that game would have definitely lived on for way longer. I mean, the fact that people are still playing Friday the 13th and there's still a dedicated community making mods on Steam and PC for people to continue playing it, I think that right there is enough proof to say with confidence that Friday the 13th was a major success and still has a community that loves that game, and I can't blame them. Friday the 13th remains one of my favorite multiplayer horror games of all time. I had the most fun memories with it. I've met friends on there that I still have to this day, thank God. Friday the 13th was one of the greatest. It was one of the best asymmetrical horror games of all time, and it's actually sad how so many others failed to try and recapture what that game had going for it. And it wouldn't even been that hard to recapture it. Friday the 13th was made by a dev team that loved the franchise. They loved the series of Friday the 13th themselves. They were fans of it themselves, and clearly they were dedicated to making it a great experience. That's why the game was so great. You can't make a great game if you are not dedicated to actually doing what it takes to make the game great in the first place. And that just doesn't go for asymmetrical horror games. That goes for every game. For every developer out there, it's impossible to make a great game if you are not 100% invested in what you are creating. A lazy creator will always create a lazy piece of a game that will just be forgotten about and will just not be good. You know, that's how bad games are made in the first place. Let's be honest. I mean, bad games will always be made by developers who didn't care enough about the game they were making in the first place to make it the opposite of bad. That's why they end up being bad. You know, if you don't, it's not just about letting a game cook in the oven. It's about actually trying to add the ingredients and create something that will be truly special after it is done baking. A game can have no bugs and no glitches and can still be garbage. You know, it's not just about letting a game cook. It's not just about letting a game finish so that way there's not a lot of technical problems. No, it's about it's so much more than that. Creating a great game will take a lot out of you. But that's why some of the best games and some just great games in general, that's why all those great games should be appreciated. You should appreciate the developers who make those great games, because even making smaller indie games is really, really hard. But that's how you can tell that someone loves what they are creating. Creating video games is one of the finest pieces of art that we create in the modern era. I'm very passionate about gaming, and I know for a fact that developers need to be just as passionate, if not more passionate than me, to truly have what it takes and is willing to make all the sacrifices to do what you need to make a great video game. And that just doesn't go for horror games or asymmetrical games in general. That goes for every game we've ever had. All the great games we've had from history and all the great games we are thankfully still getting today, it takes a lot. And that's why someone has to truly love and be fully dedicated to what they are creating. If someone wants to create art, they're going to do it. And if they are just doing it for the sake of money, then they're only going to be focused on that. And if you're only focused on making money from a video game, then you're just going to want to get it done, create it as fast as you can, and get it out to the public so that way you can start seeing those Benjamin Franklins rolling. So, you know, when it comes to games like Friday the 13th, that game was made by people who were not only dedicated, but were fans themselves. It's the classic example of something made by the fans for the fans. And that's why Friday the 13th was such a great game. A fantastic multiplayer horror game that will forever live inside my heart. I will always remember it, and it will always remain one of the most enjoyable multiplayer experiences I have personally ever had in my short years of living. Dead by Daylight and TCM, and even Evil Dead, despite how much I enjoyed it, none of those games will ever be as special to me as Friday the 13th was. Not just because of the fact that I'm a major fan of Friday the 13th myself, but also just because of the way that that game was made. And gameplay is a big thing when it comes to asymmetrical horror. It's not just about balance, it's not just about updates, it's not just about having loads of content and DLC, but it's also about how the actual gameplay is. I've said this before and I'll say it again, but the gameplay of a video game, that's the soul of a game. People don't pick up their controllers for something else than the gameplay. Of course, there's other things, but the most important thing is the gameplay. Even the people who play games that are focused on the narrative and the story, still the gameplay is a major factor on why people decide to play a game. You know, it's the story and the gameplay that make a game great. The story is the heart, the gameplay is the soul. That's how I see it. But when it comes to asymmetrical horror gaming, the gameplay needs to be good, especially for this specific genre. And this is exactly why these games tend to fail and die over after only being out for a year. So, like I was saying before, after Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, There have not been any single asymmetrical horror games that have been as successful as these two. Yes, Friday the 13th did die, but it was at no fault of its own. The game didn't lose its player base. The game went through all this and it still has a dedicated player base. Like I said, people are still making mods on PC just so people can continue playing it. They're adding new content in it just so they can also, make it feel fresh still after all these years. That's what you call dedication. That's why you can tell that the fans and the player base is dedicated to Friday the 13th. So for those of you who think that Friday the 13th failed because it wasn't good enough, you're wrong. The game failed because of all the bullshit lawsuits that literally killed the franchise for so long until now, of course. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Evil Dead, these two games specifically are also very tragic in my opinion because both of these games had like a lot of potential. Like when I say these games have potential, I mean these games had a lot of potential. Texas Chainsaw Massacre had decently fun gameplay. First impressions were good. Playing as family felt different from playing as victim, which is also important in, the two unique roles of asymmetrical horror. You've got the killer side, you've got the survivor side. So playing as both definitely felt unique, and it definitely felt like a good experience for both for the most part. TCM had a lot of problems as well with balance, though. Balance is another thing as to why asymmetrical horror never survives. Like that's another reason why these games never actually make it. So besides gameplay, TCM had decently fun gameplay. There was even, rewards for having skill. Some things in the game definitely reward you for actually being good at it. I remember Bubba's Chainsaw Rush, when you would do the chainsaw sprint, if you would chainsaw attack at just the right time, you would be able to instantly kill someone. And that was really fun. I remember trying to get good using that specific attack on Leatherface, and to be honest, I only wanted to get good at it because I just wanted to be able to kill people instantly. I thought that was fun. So I remember that. And playing as Victim was also fun as well. It felt like a genuinely terrifying experience at time. When you had all three of the family members right on your heels while the exit was just a few quarters away from you, the heart-racing experience of trying to get there before Leatherface or any of the other family members caught up to you, that right there will always be a heart-pounding experience, and way better than how it is in Dead by Daylight, where you just get all the generators done, teabag at the exit gates, send the killer message telling him to kill himself, and etc, etc, etc. So, TCM was actually a lot better than Dead by Daylight as well, but come on, how hard is it to be better than a game like Dead by Daylight? And that's one thing that all of these other asymmetrical games have in common. They were better than Dead by Daylight, which just makes it all the more tragic that they still failed and were not able to outlive Dead by Daylight, or even dethrone it possibly. So, again, why is it that these games always fail? What is it that kills these games? Well, first of all, it's the gameplay and the balance. That's the first major thing about these games. Now, when it comes to asymmetrical horror, of course you have to have fun gameplay, and TCM and Evil Dead, specifically, those two had very fun gameplay, but there were problems. There were problems with balancing on both sides. There was also a ton of bugs and glitches, and this is one of the biggest reasons why these games end up dying. It is the lack of dedication and so much incompetence. Let's start off with TCM. Why did TCM fail when it came to balance? Well, because the game was horribly balanced. The game may not be as unbalanced as Dead by Daylight, but it still had a lot of unbalance and even broken shit on both sides. I remember when the game first came out, you was able to do that door tech where you would basically just be able to close a door on one of the family and then just continue pushing it open and stunning the family members. That right there was extremely broken. Of course they did fix it, but I get that it's hard to fully balance out a game like TCM or any other asymmetrical horror game. I get it. It's a challenge. But that's why we have so many asymmetrical horror games that end up failing, because It is the lack of dedication and the incompetence. Yes, it's hard to balance an asymmetrical game, which is why we need better developers who are actually willing to, you know, to take on that challenge. Because of course it's challenging. It's always going to be a challenge. But with asymmetrical horror, it's just an even bigger challenge than it is in something like Call of Duty, for example. Like, balance in Call of Duty is non-existent. When it comes to balancing an asymmetrical horror game, you need to have it where both sides basically feel like they are actually surviving depending on their skill if they're playing as a survivor, and killer needs to feel like they're actually getting kills or losing kills depending on their skill or lack of skill. If you have the community feeling like the game is unbalanced or unfair on either side, then that is something that needs to be addressed. Now, of course, there's the possibility that maybe one of the players, whether it be on the killer side or the survivor side, is just trash at the game, or they're just not good. And yes, that is a real possibility. My solution for that is these developers that are making these asymmetrical horror games, they should have a team dedicated to just playing the game themselves and ironing out anything that they decide is unbalanced or needs to be updated. They should have a team that does literally just that. They should have a playtesting team that will playtest every update that the game gets and make sure that every change that the game gets is actually a good change. Because relying just on community feedback is good, but there's always the possibility that the developers might end up listening to, people who are just calling for things to either be updated or nerfed or changed just because they don't like it and just because they're too casual to find a way around it. Because asymmetrical horror games are definitely very competitive. If anyone tells you that these type of games are casual, they're not. Dead by Daylight, TCM, Evil Dead, all these games were competitive. Even Friday the 13th was kind of competitive. Although Friday was a teeny bit more casual, I'll say. And that's why it was such a great experience. Because I don't really like competitive games that much, but still. TCM was competitive. Evil Dead was competitive. So having skill and actually being good at the game is something that you need to have in order to, win or not get angry if you care about winning. Personally, I'm very casual. Like when I was playing TCM, when I actually did play it, or Evil Dead, or any of these other games, I never had the mindset where I have to win in order to truly have a good time or have a good experience or just enjoy the game. I'm someone who enjoys the gameplay wholeheartedly, and winning to me is just like, I don't know, it just makes it slightly better, but all I really care about is actually enjoying the game at its core, enjoying the gameplay, going on fun chases if I'm playing as a survivor, or having fun chasing after the person when I'm playing as killer. You see, I love this genre, but hate it at the same time because of how much the developers fuck everything up. When I played TCM for the first time, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed playing as Leatherface and his Twisted Family. My favorite family member was the Hitchhiker. I love playing as him. I used to be one of those assholes, right? I used to be one of those assholes who would hide in the bushes, and I would wait for someone to get close to me, and then I just jump out and just ambush their ass. That was probably the most genuine fun I ever had playing TCM. And of course, playing as Leatherface and trying to get those insta-kill takedowns was always fun as well. I remember making people rage quit all the time, and it was always satisfying. That's the kind of person I am. I enjoy the actual game when it's playing out, not when the game tells me if I won or lost. That's not the kind of person I am when I play these kind of games. But like I was saying before, TCM did also have some problems with balance. And when it comes to asymmetrical horror, you need to actually make sure that the game is balanced. Because live service games, you need to also make sure that your community, your player base, is not feeling like the game is unfair to them, or that the game is just broken on, the other side. Because, of course, like I said before, there are people who can just be complaining due to their lack of skill, but if someone is good at the game and they can genuinely figure out, and if they genuinely know that something is just downright unfair on the other side, then that would be good feedback to listen to, you know? And that's why I think that these developers need to have a dedicated player base, or no, a dedicated team, I mean, that plays these games themselves. And of course, they need to actually be good at the game, because only players who are good at the game, only they will know if it is their lack of skill or if it is something that is just entirely unfair. Because there can be moments in these games where something really is just downright unfair, whether it be on the killer side or the survivor side. So, you know, you can't listen to everyone, and that's why I think that there should be a dedicated team that just play test the game themselves. They should play it every day with other, you know, with other members of the team to see if something is actually balanced or unbalanced. That way they can change it. But TCM did not have very good balance. That's the thing. The game was not balanced. Some may argue that it was, and some will just say that I'm complaining and I'm literally what I was just describing. One of those people who had a lack of skill. I don't think so. I don't think so. But I'm very observant. That's the thing. I'm very observant. So if something, let's say I was playing as a survivor, right? Let's say I was playing as a survivor in TCM. If something killed me, then I would be able to put myself in the shoes of someone who was actually good at the game. And I could imagine if that killed me unfairly or not. I'm not sure if you guys understand what the fuck I'm saying right now, but basically what I'm saying is, in simple words, is I could determine, despite not being a pro at any of the games I play, I think I'm good enough and observant enough to determine if something is fair or unfair in a game. Because every single game I play, especially games like this, I always pay attention and I always observe and I mentally analyze everything that I see, whether it be details, gameplay mechanics, how something works, and I can also imagine how someone else would feel if they just experienced something that I experienced in the game that I'm playing. So, you know, that's just how my brain works. I have a form of ADHD where it's very distracting, but other times my brain could kind of look like a supercomputer. So, you know, that's just the kind of person I am once again. So, yeah, when I say TCM had some really unbalanced shit in there, I mean TCM had some pretty unbalanced shit in there. Not like the whole thing wasn't unbalanced. I'm not going to say it like that, because of course there were things that were balanced. Of course there were things that actually were pretty fair for both sides, but there were also things in there that were unbalanced. So, this is one of the biggest things, in my opinion, about asymmetrical horror that is constantly contributing to the death of the games in this genre. Because asymmetrical horror games are live service. They're the same thing. They're live service games. Asymmetrical horror is just a different type of live service. So, when it comes to live service games, you need to make sure that the player base is satisfied. You need to make sure that they are constantly coming back, they're constantly playing your game, because the more people you have playing a live service game, the more successful that makes it. Having a dedicated player base for a live service game, whether it be standard live service or asymmetrical horror, whatever it may be, live service is live service. Having a dedicated player base is an essential. It is something that is an absolute requirement. So if you don't have a player base, a strong player base that is genuinely enjoying the game and always wants to come back, then you're going to have a problem if you don't have those things. Because live service is also very competitive as well. There's like so many live service games nowadays, so having a live service game that truly stands out and is keeping the attention of your player base, despite there being like a bunch of other live service games that they can be playing, if they are choosing to play yours, then I'd say you're on the right path. So balance is a big thing when it comes to asymmetrical horror. You need to make sure that both sides are satisfied. You need to make sure that both sides are feeling like everything is in their favor if they take advantage of the game mechanics and are actually good enough to take advantage of those mechanics and are just good enough at the games in general. Now again, my method to counter the crybabies and the casuals and the noobs who will just, they'll die like one time in these kinds of games, or they'll lose one match as killer, and they'll go on Reddit and they'll start writing forums about how this is unbalanced and this is overpowered and that needs to be nerfed and this needs to be nerfed, etc., etc., etc. So again, my method for dealing with that is to have a dedicated team that makes sure that what this person is saying, or this group of players, because of course there could be like hundreds of these crybabies, so many noobs and casuals. You need to make sure that what they're saying is actually either legit feedback that's, good, valuable feedback, or just the feedback of a bunch of assholes who are just not good at the game. I'm a casual myself, but casuals genuinely can ruin games. I will admit, casuals can definitely have a negative impact on games. Another thing is, it's also about making these kinds of games fun. You want these games to be fun. You want them to be fun so that way the casuals will be satisfied and they won't be angry like they always are when they die in the game, or when something is not fair, or when something's too hard for them. Ooh, this is so hard. This is too hard for me. Make it easier, developers. Please make it easier, or I'll stop playing the game and I'll give you a bad review. Yeah, okay, those guys are fucking idiots, okay? They genuinely annoy me, because we have those same types of people in Dead by Daylight who are still complaining about killers despite how survivor-sided DBD is. I remember how mad people were with the Ghoul, and they're still mad about Ghoul, even though Ghoul is really not that overpowered like they say he is. But again, getting off topic here, it's about making these kinds of games fun. Asymmetrical horror should be a fun genre. The gameplay of these games should be fun. Friday the 13th was fun. I don't mean to constantly compare everything to Friday the 13th, but okay, Evil Dead was fun too. Evil Dead had a very fun gameplay loop, despite also having some unbalanced and annoying shit that genuinely needed updating or changing. TCM was fun. Evil Dead was fun. Friday the 13th was fun. All three of these games have potential, like I said, and only one of them was actually successful. So making the gameplay fun will lead to you making better decisions on how to balance the game out. You've got this going for the survivors, you've got these mechanics going for them, but you've got these counter mechanics going for the killer, where they can counter something that the survivor could do, but then they can do a little cheeky thing to counter what the killer's got going for them. It's all about fun but still competitive slightly gameplay, because let's be honest, you can't have an asymmetrical horror game that isn't somewhat competitive. So my method would be to combine these things. You take what's competitive, you take the best elements of what's competitive, and you combine it with the best things that are casual and just, doesn't have you raging, and doesn't have you feeling angry, or doesn't have you feeling like the other person you're playing with is an asshole. You combine the best of both of these things to make an all-in-all better experience for the game you are making. And if anyone is wondering if it's even possible to be casual and competitive at the same time, it is, okay? It is. Of course, it does kind of depend on the people specifically who are playing the game. There's always going to be assholes who are overly competitive and just want to win, and then they'll either complain or throw a tantrum when they lose. And then there'll be the casuals who are so casual that they want the game to basically play itself for them. So that's why, again, my method would work, because I know that if the developers who are making these games, if they truly knew their game that they're making, and if they know what they're doing, and if they know the game from top to bottom, then they will know if the game is actually unbalanced in certain aspects or not. And that's why it's important for these people to actually play their own game after they're done making it. The developers themselves should play their own game to see how good or how messed up something is, so that way they can fix it. And you see, that's the problem with IllFonic and Gun Media. You can tell very easily that, just like Behavior, who don't play Dead by Daylight despite being the makers and developers of it, they don't play their game. Behavior doesn't play Dead by Daylight. They created the game, they develop it, they update it, they make all these stupid ass changes to it, but they don't play it. They just listen to the groups of people that have slightly more saying the same shit than the other group, and that's what will determine if they should listen to this group or that group. Because there's all kinds of groups in these communities where a certain group will say something and then another group will say something entirely different, and depending on which group is larger or has, more influence, possibly if it's content creators, that's how Behavior will make their decision when it comes to either changing something or nerfing something or updating something or whatever. If Behavior actually had a dedicated team that played Dead by Daylight and knew how the game worked and knew how the mechanics worked, and if they could, have enough game sense to determine if something is actually unbalanced or not, like I do, then Dead by Daylight would probably be a more balanced game too, even though it's obviously really not. But anyways, IllFonic, and specifically the people who are working on TCM, they just did not really know how to change the gameplay to make it more balanced and more fun. Despite the game already being sort of fun, there was a lot of annoying mechanics and just annoying things in TCM that could have very easily been changed or updated to make it a better experience. It's a quality of life update at this point. That's all they needed to do. Just some quality of life updates, just some things to not make it easier, but to just make it more fair. Because you never want something to just be straight up easy in these kinds of games. When it comes to asymmetrical horror, it needs to be fair. It needs to be fun, fair, and you need to give the players a sense that they need to be good enough to actually be able to play these games without losing constantly. And, that's another good method. Make the games fun, so that way the people who don't care about winning, like me, can just enjoy the gameplay. Just have that simplicity. Just enjoy the game. Like, I'm the kind of person that likes to play these games, play a couple of matches, watch some TV, or then just do something else afterwards. I'm a very casual person, whether it's in video games or life even. Have it fun. Make it fun and casual for people like me, but have those competitive elements for the other people who like to win and like to be competitive. Then you have everyone is happy. Everyone is happy. You've got the casuals happy because it's got fun and genuinely enjoyable gameplay, whether they're playing Killer or Survivor, and then you've got the competitive elements that the competitive people can enjoy taking advantage of those competitive mechanics. That right there would make this genre so much better, and I wish more developers would actually use my method. Hell, if I made an asymmetrical game, I'm not trying to sound like I'm a type of person that's up their own asshole, but I'm pretty sure I would make a damn fine asymmetrical horror game if I, had the money to actually do it. But I'd say that balance is definitely what is killing these games. Because if the game is not balanced, if the game has broken, unfinished, and just unfair shit on either the Killer side or the Survivor side, and this goes beyond TCM, okay? I'm using TCM as an example, but this goes for any asymmetrical horror game that comes out now, in the future, and beyond. If you have unbalanced stuff on either side, you're going to have people on that side take advantage of it and ruin it for the other side. And what that is going to do is the other side is going to feel like the developers don't care about the fact that the game that they made and they paid for has shit that is making the experience unenjoyable intentionally. Because of course, when one of these games is unbalanced, it is the developer's fault. It's their design. It's their gameplay design. The gameplay design is why something can be unbalanced, so obviously that's going to piss off the player base at the devs, who will then refuse to either fix it, update it, or just make it, the opposite of unbalanced, It's what do you call it? What's that word I'm looking for? The type of word where a dad abandons their kid. That word, abandons. You have developers who will neglect these games. They make them, they get all the money, and then they just neglect them. They don't update them for days, weeks, and they just leave the community hanging while they're forced to deal with the bullshit of the games that they made. And then they'll come out like weeks later and finally announce something, and either it'll fix it or it won't. Or it'll just make it worse. Who knows? It's also a lack of skill that these developers have. They're just not really good at game design. TCM had a very fun concept and it had decently fun gameplay, but they just also, I don't think they even knew what to do, like with all the shit in there. And it's sad because the whole game was not unbalanced. It was just a few things. All it would have took was just a little bit more dedication and a little more playtesting, if they even done that, which I'm pretty sure they didn't. All they needed was to address a few problems, update a few things, and I would say TCM was pretty close to actually being a pretty balanced and fair game for both sides. But it's that lack of dedication and so much neglect from these asymmetrical horror game developers. You see, here's how they do it. They make these games, right? They make them, they design them, they give people a good first impressions of how the game looks. The gameplay looks fun, it feels fun, but then the more you start playing it, the more you start noticing these little problems, these little flaws that could really use some updating or changing, and then the developers are like, nah, we already made the money we wanted. We're already enjoying the money we earned from our, our player base that we're about to take advantage of, and then they just don't update these games properly. They neglect them. They make these games, they collect the funds that they've earned from these games, and then they just neglect them. They just let them die there slowly. They wait for a large player base to start playing this game. They wait for a large community for these games. They wait for these games to get a large community, they play them, and then the more problems that the players encounter, they'll just wait for the player base to start slowly and slowly diminishing while taking full advantage of those who are still playing it with microtransactions and in-game cosmetics that have to be earned or purchased with in-game currency that needs to be bought with real money, and then they'll just milk what's left of a diminishing community, an unsatisfied diminishing community, because they won't fix the game, they won't update the games, they won't make them the way they're supposed to be, and then they just run off with the money. And when I say make these games the way they're supposed to be, I already explained. Asymmetrical horror will only work if it is fun, if the gameplay's fun, if it's balanced, and if it is, the gameplay is so important. You need to have fun gameplay, first of all. You need to have balance, and you need to have fun mechanics. You need to have things that are just making both sides satisfied. Make it more immersive, too. When you have an asymmetrical horror game, when someone is playing as the killer, or if it's, multiple people playing as killers, you make them feel like they're really playing as killers. Make them feel like they really are playing as this terrifying monster that the other side can be screaming and having fun being chased by and being scared by. That's what a horror game should be. This genre is so sad because it has so much potential to be so much greater. When you play a single player horror game, yeah, it can still be enjoyable when you're being chased by something scary, you're fighting monsters, but obviously you're fighting AI. How fun could it be knowing that you're being chased by a terrifying monster being controlled by a real thinking human being on the other side? It makes it more fun, it makes it more scary, it makes it more enjoyable for all sides. Asymmetrical horror can be one of the best genres in horror gaming in general, but these fucking morons that are making these games, they have ruined what this genre could have been. And it would have taken such little things to make it what it was supposed to be. All you had to do was make it balanced, make it fair, have a dedicated team that makes sure that the game is actually balanced and is actually fun, and, it's also good for the developers themselves. I mean, if I was a game developer and if I was able to play the games that I would be making and then I would be updating them at the same time and making changes that I know would make the experience more fair or just better in general, we'll talk about that later. I would love that. I would love to be a developer if I could. Now, the next reason why these games tend to die is also because of a lack of content. Besides how unbalanced TCM was in a very few short aspects that could have easily been fixed but weren't, it's also a lack of content and lack of game modes. Now, having good game modes in an asymmetrical horror game is also something that would probably go a long way in keeping the player base interested, keeping them dedicated, and making them feel like the game they're playing actually does have more to offer than just one single type of gameplay loop. Having good game modes in an asymmetrical horror game is also essential for keeping a community, which is also essential. It all goes hand in hand. If you have lots of fun game modes, if you've got game modes that actually feel different from the game's main game mode, that can go a long way. And of course, TCM did have like a limited time separate game mode. I think it was called Rush Week or something. That doesn't sound very fun. That doesn't sound very interesting. I mean, look at Call of Duty or shooters or just other battle royale games. As much as I despise Fortnite, Fortnite has different game modes. They have the no build mode. They have to be able to change perspectives. You can go in first person and third person now, I hear. I hate Fortnite now. I'll never play it, but that does sound pretty cool for the people who do like Fortnite. Having good game modes and having genuinely fun game modes that really do feel different from the main game's game mode, that would probably go a long way in keeping the community occupied and keeping them busy and also keeping the experience fresh. And it also gives the developers a chance to try new things. Another method that I would use is, why not do some limited time game modes? You make them limited time at first, and if the players and the developers like the way how it's going, if the developers think it's good for the game, and especially if the community has, good enough feedback on it, valuable feedback that doesn't come from a bunch of dumbass casuals or overly competitive morons who have to win every single online game they play, then they can keep it a permanent one. They'll make it a permanent game mode. That will be a great way to test out new and improved game modes. Make them limited at first, and then you test them out with the community. And if the community likes it, if you like it, if you think it fits into the game, and if the community welcomes it, and if they think it's a good addition to the game, then you make it from a limited event to a permanent game mode that stays there forever. That would probably go a great way for asymmetrical horror games. I don't know why they don't have that. Again, listen. This is why they fail. No dedication, lack of commitment, laziness, greediness, and pathetic incompetence. Illphonic, the makers of Ghostbusters and Chris Hansen Predator game. Chris Hansen's not really in there. I'm just fucking around, obviously, but you know what I mean. Just trying to spread some humor. You know what I mean. They make these games. They make them, and they'll update them for a couple of weeks. They'll make changes, or at least they'll pretend to. They'll talk about how they're gonna listen to the community. They're gonna fix the bugs and the glitches, and they're gonna do all these things. And they'll do it for a while, but then it's like they lose interest. They lose interest, and then they just let the game slowly die with a diminishing community and a game that just gets more and more broken. Because then, of course, like, if you have a team making a live service game, I've said it before and I'll say it again. When it comes to making a live service game, you need to constantly be maintaining it. If you are not maintaining a live service game, if you're not taking care of bugs, glitches, if you're not updating things that need to be updated, if you're not adding new content, if you're not, changing things that are either unbalanced or just a bad thing, or, fixing broken mechanics, maintaining a live service game, all those things I mentioned, that's just a few things. Maintaining a live service game is hard work. It's very hard work. It's a thing that multiple game developers in this industry simply don't have. And that's why so many live service games end up dying in general. Not just asymmetrical horror games, but how many live service games have we had die this year and the year prior, 2024? Maintaining a live service game is very hard work. You have to not only stick by the community and work with the community, but you also have to know whose feedback to take, which sides of the community to listen to, because of course you gotta separate the bad players from the good players, so that way you don't listen to the brain dead casuals. And you gotta really know the game truly. You make the game, you have a dev team that makes these games. They should be the ones who should be able to make the right choices in updating them and changing things that need to be changed. Because obviously people can make mistakes, developers can make mistakes, they're only human. That's why it's so important to have a team that actually knows how to well maintain a live service game, to change things that need to be changed, to update things that need to be updated, and to make things right if they aren't. That's why not just asymmetrical, but live service games in general, that's why so many of them simply don't make it. No live service game makes it forever, but in my eyes, a successful live service game is one that could go on for at least a decade, or slightly less, or even slightly more. I mean, if you can keep a live service game, whether it's asymmetrical or not, if you can keep a live service game going for that long, all that means is that you've been able to keep a dedicated community, an ever-growing community, because of how good your game is and because of how well you treat it, how well you update it, how well it's made, and how even better you are making it with the changes you add, the content you add in, or anything else. That's what makes a live service game successful. And this is just like this is like a short little thing here, but TCM also did have a lot of cosmetics, and every live service game has them. Whether it's live service, asymmetrical horror, we already know that Halloween game is going to have a bunch of it. If you're going to have cosmetics in a live service game, again, this goes back to having fun gameplay. If the game is fun, if the game is enjoyable, if the players feel like the game is good, if most of them feel like the game is good, then they'll feel more inclined to actually spend extra money on it to show their appreciation, and also because of how much they love the game. If people love a game, then they're gonna spend more money on it if they have that option for getting the cool little skins and cosmetics that everybody loves. Personally, I don't give a shit about cosmetics, but I guess everyone else does. But yeah, I mean, they'll feel more inclined to spend money on it if they're enjoying it. And about what I said, yeah, if most people are enjoying the game, then you don't gotta listen to those brain-dead idiots who will say that the game is this or that. I mean, obviously, you're never going to be able to please anyone, or everyone, I mean, for different reasons. You can make a live service asymmetrical horror game that is balanced to the T. It's fun on both sides. Everything is dependent on skill or, other things, skill or the person who's playing, all those things. You get my drift. You get it. There'll still be people who will say that it's unbalanced or unfair or something needs to be nerfed or changed. There are people who are too casual and people who are too competitive. So, but if most people just enjoy the game, if you have at least 70% saying that the game is good, enjoyable, balanced, and like the rest saying otherwise, then you don't gotta listen to those people. You don't, because you can never please a brain-dead casual, and you can never please an over-competitive asshole who needs to have that sense of pride and feeds into his ego when he beats someone virtually in an online video game. You're never going to be able to change or get to those people. So yeah, besides a lack of balance, a lack of genuinely good updates, again, it's also that lack of content. None of these asymmetrical horror games ever had more game modes. You look at Evil Dead, which had a single player mode, and Evil Dead did have a couple of different modes. It did have a couple of different modes, but they were not really that different from each other. They didn't really feel that distinct from each other. A lot of them just involved different amounts of players that would be in it. So that really wasn't all that good. To have better gameplay modes or better game modes in an asymmetrical horror game, you want them to feel distinct, but also not too unfamiliar, because then that'll kind of throw people off. You want it to feel distinct, you want it to feel like something new, and something that is just fresh enough to feel like something that genuinely fits into the game that the person spent their money on, and the players themselves in general spent their money on. So having good game modes that are fun, enjoyable, and offer a different experience, not too different, but just a different experience that's fun for both sides, that would, like I said before, 100 times I've been saying this shit, that would go a long way in making these asymmetrical horror games better. And the last thing that would fix the asymmetrical horror game genre would be better developers, just better developers in general, man, because it's like I said, these fuckers will make these games, they'll make them, and they will not maintain them. They'll maintain them poorly. Eventually, they'll just give up. They will make bad updates. They won't make it more balanced like it should be, because balance is such an important thing. And if these developers were more skillful, and if they had more creativity and originality, these asymmetrical games would also have better gameplay. I mean, like I said, Evil Dead did have good gameplay. It was okay, it was fun, and so did TCM, and the mechanics were good too, Like, those two games had potential for a reason. They did have fun gameplay and they did have good mechanics. It was the lack of updates and the lack of balance and the constant neglect of the developers that killed those games. But for future asymmetrical horror games, you want to capture exactly what those three did. You want to have fun, enjoyable gameplay. You want to iron out all the bugs, all the glitches, and you want to make sure that everything is as balanced and as fair as it could be. You never want something to be in there that is just a clutch. You know, you never want to have things that are clutches in there and just gives you an easy way out to win over the other person. Maybe a few, just like one or two. I mean, when it comes to playing as the killer, you want the killer to feel powerful. You want the killer to be scary. And on the survivor side, again, you're gonna have those people, especially on the fucking survivor side, that will constantly be complaining about the killer. And this is actually due to Dead by Daylight culture. The survivor mains from the Dead by Daylight community play a big role in contributing to these other asymmetrical horror games dying, because we all know that those who play Dead by Daylight will go and they'll swoop their way into these other asymmetrical horror games. They'll immediately play the survivor side of these other asymmetrical horror games, and if the killer is not weak as fuck, just the way they like it in Dead by Daylight, then they'll complain in whatever new multiplayer asymmetrical horror game they're playing now. So again, that's why it is actually essential to have developers who know what's unbalanced, who knows what's fair and knows what isn't fair. The developers themselves should be playing these games almost as much as the players, the public themselves, so that way they can determine what needs to be changed or not. Because again, player feedback can be a bad thing if you're not listening to the right people. So on the killer side, you want the killer to feel powerful. You want to feel powerful when you are playing as the killer, but of course not to the point where the killer is just able to kill the survivors in just like one hit. Unless that there's like a rare chance they can do that, because that could make it more scarier, I suppose. Like, I remember when I would be playing TCM, when I was being chased by Leatherface, when I knew he was doing that chainsaw sprint, and I knew that if the person playing Leatherface was able to do that perfect chainsaw sweep, I knew that my ass was grass in one hit. So, you know, having certain teeny tiny clutches on the killer side specifically, I don't think that's too much of a bad thing, as long as they can't do it easily. If it all depends on skill, and if it takes a lot of practicing and a lot to pull off those specific mechanics on the killer side that can either do a lot of damage on the survivors or just instantly kill them, then I don't think that's a big problem. But you want the killer to feel powerful, you want the killer to feel scary. In so many of these games, and the players who play them, the players are not scared of the person playing the killer or the people playing the killers, because, you know, we've got a lot of other multiplayer horror games where we've got like multiple killers now instead of just one, which is not a bad thing. I prefer having just one killer personally, but it's fine. But again, off topic. You want the players to actually fear the killer. Now, I know a lot of people have an ego, especially gamers, where being afraid of another player is kind of a bad thing. They don't like it, they don't enjoy it, but again, these games do end up attracting the wrong people, I think, and that's another reason why they end up dying. Because you've got people who will play these games and they want to feel like a fucking badass survivor. They want to play these games so they can feel like a badass survivor. They're kicking the killer in the balls. They can go and send the killer a message saying, haha, GG, you suck. Please kill yourself. Your mother's a whore and I hope she dies from cancer. Like, you've got these kinds of, these fucking queers who play these games and they want to feel like a badass. They don't want to play a horror game to have fun being scared, to have fun running away and trying to escape. I mean, these fucking idiots don't even play horror games, I bet. I bet the people who play Dead by Daylight haven't touched a single survival horror game. These asymmetrical horror games should be appealed to the horror community. And I'm sure they are, but of course they are available to everyone, you know. I guess that's one of the reasons why the people who still play Texas Chainsaw are mostly actual real horror fans. At least some of them, and they're actually fans of the subject matter of TCM and horror in general. And again, I can't stress this enough. That's why these developers should have dedicated teams that play test these games and just they should have teams that play these games as if they were not developers of it themselves, just normal people just playing these games, because I think they would be able to tell if the game had genuine unbalanced issues on certain aspects of each side, whether it be the killer side or the survivor side. But yeah, like I was saying, these games, they appeal to the wrong types of audiences. You've got people who just want to play these games and they just want to beat the shit out of the killer and just survive and feel like they're better than the other person. They want to have that sense of, haha, you were supposed to kill me, but I survived. You lose, I win, you suck, etc., etc. But that's not the kind of people that are supposed to be playing these games. I mean, if you want to be that kind of person, fine, but again, these are the same kinds of people who will complain if the game isn't holding their hand like it is in Dead by Daylight. Because that's why Dead by Daylight is such a garbage-ass game. Almost every killer in Dead by Daylight is so weak that when you play as the killer, you feel like you're the one fighting for survival, while the survivors are just beating your ass and just winning without even putting in much effort. That's why Dead by Daylight culture is so bad. They're one of the biggest reasons, besides the unbalance shit, as to why these games die. It goes hand in hand. These games are unbalanced because of the lack of dedication and incompetence from the developers. And then you've got survivor mains, specifically, who come from Dead by Daylight's community. They come to these games, they play these games, and then they call for nerfs or changes to the killer side, so that way it feels more fair for them. And by more fair, I mean easy as fuck. They want the killers to be so easy to go against that they don't even have to put any effort into it. They can just have fun with all their little friends and their gay little friend group and just have fun bullying the killer and just winning without putting in any effort. Again, you're never gonna please those people because those people are essentially casuals. Dead by Daylight survivor mains are casuals. Like, how much effort does it take to learn how to... Explain this to me. How much effort does it take to run around a pallet? The only thing about looping in Dead by Daylight that takes any skill is being able to mind game the killer and being able to predict their movements. But that's it. How much effort does it take to run around a piece of wood and then drop it when the killer gets slightly too close? How fucking easy is that? Like, again, that's why it would also be so important and so good if some of these other asymmetrical horror games had better and interactive gameplay. You want fun, interactive gameplay, and fun mechanics as well. TCM and Evil Dead both had just those things. They had fun mechanics on both the survivor side and the killer side, and it all goes down to just having a fun gameplay loop in general. Fun mechanics, fun interactability with fellow survivors or the killer themselves. Having voice chat in these games is also such a fun experience. Hearing your friends scream on the other side or hearing them get killed by the killer while you're running away in panic, or when you hear your friend die and there's only like two of you left and it's just you two who are stuck trying to survive the killers if you can, that makes this such an even more enjoyable genre. And again, that's just another reason why the asymmetrical horror genre is so incredibly tragic. Because these can genuinely be such fun horror games. I say horror games because that's what these are. People, these are not games where you can go in and just have fun bullying the killer. Okay? You can be that kind of person, but you're not going to enjoy it. Okay? These games, for some reason, they appeal to the wrong fucking community. These are horror games that should be made primarily for horror fans, because a horror fan would not be complaining about being chased by a killer or being killed by a killer. Only fucking Dead by Daylight people have that kind of stupid casual ass mentality. So yeah, these are the reasons why these games die. You've got these games appealing to the wrong community, and again, these games do appeal, they try to appeal to horror fans, but the wrong type of people end up playing them. Yes, I'm a horror fan. I played all these games because I'm a horror fan. I love the IPs and I just love horror in general, but you'll have idiots who don't even play horror games. They're not idiots per se, but they kind of are at the same time because they play these games. They only play these asymmetrical horror games because they have a friend group that they play other types of games with, and they want to play a horror game for whatever reason, and they choose to play. They play a multiplayer horror game because obviously they want to play with their friends, but they need to understand that just because the killer can't kiss their ass, that doesn't mean that the game is unfair or unbalanced. You see, I know what truly makes a game unbalanced or not, but these guys don't, okay? They just don't. That's why so many people love playing Survivor with their friends in Dead by Daylight, because it's an easy peasy experience. So yeah, besides garbage people, garbage casuals who play these games, these are the reasons, the core reasons why asymmetrical horror ends up dying and doesn't last. And again, these games just have so much potential. It's actually tragic. It's so incredibly tragic because these can be such fun and enjoyable horror games. Playing with your friends and not being those types of people, not being that kind of group, you know what I mean? Like, being in a group of friends, being scared together, screaming your heads off together, and just being scared out of your mind but having fun because of it. Because obviously, us horror fans, we play horror games because it's fun to be scared. That's why most people love the horror genre in general, except for me. I love horror because of that as well, but also because I love the story, the narrative, and the concept of horror games and horror movies. But again, how many times have I gotten besides the point of this video? Anyways, you have fun being scared, you have fun being chased by the killer, and it's even more fun when the killer themselves has voice proximity. I remember so much how when I would be playing Friday the 13th, I would be talking all crazy and I'd even be talking shit while playing as Jason. Or me and my friends would be talking shit to the guy playing Jason, he'd be talking shit back, and we would role play sometimes. Like, these are the things that give the asymmetrical horror genre the potential that it has in the first place to be such a fine and incredible genre. These games can be so much fun if you had developers who actually knew what the fuck they were doing or had more dedication than a fucking lazy ass moron who just wants to sit down all day. Like, that's the kind of fucking dedication they have. They'll make these games and then they'll sit down at the offices, they'll ignore player feedback, they'll release lackluster updates and lackluster content, and they won't add anything new or meaningful to the games themselves. Because like I said, live service games need to constantly be maintained. You've got to have fun updates, fun gameplay in general. Listen, when you make an asymmetrical horror game, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta have a fun gameplay loop. You gotta take a long and hard time to think how the gameplay should be, how the game in general should be, how the gameplay should be, how the mechanics should be, how this will affect that, how these mechanics will intertwine with the mechanics on the other side, you know, the killer side or the survivor side. You wanna have a fun gameplay concept, and then you wanna expand upon it. You want to expand on that gameplay. You want to expand on making new updates, adding new gameplay mechanics, adding new patches that will address problems and make things more balanced and more fun, and, you know, just fix things that need to be fixed. How hard is that? How hard is it for these garbage ass asymmetrical horror game developers who are completely fucking this genre? So those were just my 2 cents about how to at least fix this genre. Obviously, no one is going to listen. And you want to know another thing that pisses me off about Gun Media themselves? Gun Media, I know exactly what they're going to do. In the same year that they announced the shutdown of TCM, after them and Black Mountain Studios, who were the core main developers of TCM, after they announced in the same year that they were giving up on TCM because they neglected it and abandoned it, and obviously the fucking thing died because of that. Same year they announced it, they also announced that they're now working on a Halloween game. They abandoned and neglected TCM for the time that it was alive, and then they shut it down, and then they just instantly move on to something else. And you want to know something? Even before they announced the death and shutdown of TCM, were they even making good updates in the first place? No, they were not. A lack of good updates, lackluster balancing updates, and just lackluster updates in general. That's one of the biggest things that can kill an asymmetrical horror game. That's like a cancer to an asymmetrical horror game. That will kill an asymmetrical horror game or any live service game pretty fast. It may not kill it immediately, but it will contribute to causing a lot of damage. And the more people you have that will leave your live service game, the bigger risk that is of those people not ever coming back. Because once some people leave an online game, they'll just move on to something else. It's all about that competition because there are so many live service games out there. If your live service game is failing to keep those people in, then they will never come back. They'll leave, they'll never come back, and then they'll just move on to something else. So the more you fail to, positively balance and maintain a live service game, the more you fail to maintain a live service game the right way, and the more you constantly fuck it up or neglect it, the more people you're going to have leaving, and some of them, most of them, probably all of them, won't come back because they'll just find something better to play. Of course, they'll come back sometimes. Some people will come back. TCM did have a pretty dedicated fan base at some point, and I think they still kind of do. But you want to have more than just a dedicated fan base. You want to have a large player base. One that goes at least over... You want to be on par with Dead by Daylight. If you're not on par with Dead by Daylight, or if you're not at least close to it, then that might be a problem. So what Gun Media is going to do is they're just going to keep on making these asymmetrical horror games based off of all of these iconic classic horror films. And they're just going to keep doing the same shit. I like how in this statement where they shut down TCM, they were like, our game reached its full creative vision, and now we're ready to move on to something else. I think what they meant to say is the game did reach a full something, and what it fully reached was not a creative vision, but it reached its full financial potential. Because in the final moments of TCM, they melt the shit out of it with its in-game cosmetic and its in-game currency. Hell, TCM was actually supposed to get an in-game currency system that would have allowed players to earn in-game currency by just playing the game. But good old Gun Media probably decided that that would be too easy for developers to get precious in-game items using in-game currency, so of course they canceled that. So people who wanted to actually get in-game items and in-game cosmetics would be forced to buy it with real money. That's the kind of assholes that we have at Gun Media. That's the kind of assholes we have that are ruining this fucking genre, that they're going to continue ruining for the time being and probably the future because of you people. Of course, the reason why they're making a Halloween game now is because they're trying to fool the Halloween fans. Why do you think, I figured this out a long time ago, why do you think Gun Media is always making asymmetrical horror games based off of already well-established and already beloved horror IPs? They do it because they know that these franchises have a dedicated fan base that loves the franchise, loves the IP, and will want to get their hands on anything relating to that franchise that they love. That's why they made games based off of Friday the 13th, TCM, and now Halloween. They are fucking parasites. They're going to get all these Halloween fans invested in their upcoming Halloween game, and then as soon as it comes out, the same thing will happen with TCM with this game. It's fucking pathetic. Now, the last thing I want to talk about that some people might have, maybe already typed a comment in it, in this video, be like, oh, you forgot about the fact that the game is going to have single player. You're just a hater. Bitch, you think I give a fuck that's going to have single player? Do you really think that them announcing that the game is going to have single player is going to make any fucking difference? Yeah, Gun Media probably knows actually that it's a bit foul for them to announce the closure of TCM and then in the same year announce that they're working on a Halloween game because they neglected, abused, and then let die TCM, because of course they did let TCM die. They didn't even care about trying to bring that game back. Once they saw how much of the fan base TCM was losing because of the lack of updates and the lack of meaningful balancing updates and just the lack of dedication and the constant neglect in general for TCM, once they saw how much of the player base was leaving because of all that shit that they caused and let happen, they didn't even try and bring it back. They didn't try and say, hey guys, we're sorry, please come back, we'll start updating the game better, we'll start forcing the team we have to work on the game more. They didn't do none of that shit. They just let the fucking thing die. And then the same year they announced that they're working on a Halloween game. And you know, some people will probably say, some people will say, well, you're blaming Gun Media, but they don't make the game themselves. They just get the rights to the franchise and the rights to the IP, and they have a team work on the game. So really, it's the team's fault. And honestly, you would be right. It is the team's fault, but Gun Media still has a big role to play, because if Gun Media actually cared about the games that they're making and publishing, then they would have stepped in and told Black Mountain Studios, or whatever the fuck they're called, to stop neglecting TCM, to start making better updates, to start doing better things for the game, and to start trying to get the community back in, and to start making the game more enjoyable for the people who were still playing it despite all of the neglect and shitty updates they were giving it in the first place. They didn't give a shit about none of that. None. Not a single thing. Gun Media is fucking scum. And you see, the thing is, I think it's actually intentional. I think they want these games to fail so that way they can make the money based off of the first game that they make, and then they can constantly and quickly move on to the next one. So here's how it works. They made a game based off of TCM. They did it like shit. Their team neglected it, but they already got all the money off of it. It made their money. They got what they wanted, and now they're going to move on to the Halloween game, of course. And then once the Halloween game fails, you guys know what they're going to do next. They are going to keep doing this with every horror franchise they can get their grubby, greedy little hands on. They'll get the IP, they'll have a shitty, incompetent team develop and make it, and then fail to maintain it until the player base constantly continues to die down. The game eventually loses too much of its player base, the game dies, and then they move on to the next one like the fucking parasites that they are. And you know, honestly, it's a pretty good method. It's not a bad method. It's actually kind of genius. I'm Gun Media. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to get the IP and the IP rights to this franchise. I'm going to hire a shitty, incompetent team to develop it. I'm going to give them full creative control. I'm going to give them the ability to do whatever the fuck they want with it. The only thing I want them to do is just add a bunch of in-game cosmetics and a bunch of in-game currency that can only be obtained by spending real-life money on. And other than that one thing that I need them to do, they can do whatever the fuck they want with it. They can update it. They don't have to update it. You know, they won't have to update it. They can update it if they want to. They can balance it more if they want to. They can add new gameplay modes, which they probably won't, but they can do whatever they want with it, as long as they make at least well over $700,000 or maybe more from sales and from in-game purchases and all that other shit. As long as I get my money, they can do whatever the fuck they want with it. And as soon as it reaches its full financial potential, but we'll just call it its full creative vision, we'll call it that, so that way the people don't get mad at us. Once the game reaches its full creative vision. Oh, that's funny. What? Yeah, once it reaches its full creative vision, we'll tell them that I, Gun Media, will go and I will get another IP that my studios, my incompetent studios, can basically do whatever the fuck they want with. Oh, man. This is one of the most depressing genres in horror game history. This is more depressing than the zombie genre, the RPG horror genre, the open world horror genre. This is the most depressing out of all of those. It's the most depressing because this genre can be so good. All of the games I mentioned, TCM, Evil Dead, Killer Clowns, even that Ghostbusters game, they all have potential, and they all had the same problem that led to their inevitable demise. Hell, the Ghostbusters game and the Killer Clowns game specifically, those two games had decently fun gameplay, decently fun mechanics, and even pretty cool voice proximity chat. All they needed was just more updates, more content, more meaningful content, better balancing updates, better gameplay updates, because Ghostbusters especially needed gameplay updates. It's actually not just about balance as well. When it comes to asymmetrical horror, it's also about the in-game mechanics as well as things in the game in general. Whether it be the objective, let's say, like the objective that the survivors have to get done, or the in-game mechanics, or in-game features, or things like that. Again, it all leads to just having fun gameplay. Fun mechanics means fun gameplay. Fun interactability means fun gameplay. Fun objective means fun gameplay. Friday the 13th had a very fun objective and had multiple objectives, and that's one of the reasons why it was so good. It all leads to just having a fun gameplay loop. You just want to have, you just paint a picture, right? You just paint a picture. You want fun gameplay, and you make fun gameplay by having fun gameplay features, mechanics, the objective, the way the game works, the things the survivors can do, how killers work, etc., etc. You guys know what I mean. Killer Clowns and the Ghostbusters game, they had those things. There was just some things that needed to be changed. The Ghostbusters game fucking sucked. The gameplay looked promising, but a lot of the things in that game sucked. The features kind of sucked. The mechanics were kind of annoying. The way you have to calm down the citizens while you was trying to like cleanse a haunting or whatever when you was playing the Ghostbusters game, that was annoying kind of. And that's the thing. IllFonic specifically, bro, IllFonic fucking sucks. Like, they absolutely fucking suck. Like, they can make such fun, promising looking games, but then you start playing them and then you notice all the flaws and the incompetence in the way that the rest of the game works. Ghostbusters specifically looked fun. It looked promising. It had a good first impressions, but then as soon as I started playing it more on both the Ghostbusters side and the Ghost side themselves, like, you know, because like you call it Ghosts, you know, Ghostbusters play as Ghosts. You don't call it Killer. That'd just be weird. You just start noticing, just how shitty the actual gameplay is. And incompetence will show in how your game design works. Having good game design is essential, almost more than everything else when it comes to making asymmetrical horror games. Bad game design, and then a lack of polish and a lack of dedication and incompetence to treat that bad game design with updates, patches, and just general changes to poorly made game design is exactly what kills these games. And it is exactly why every single asymmetrical horror game has these problems, and it's exactly why they die, because they all have these problems. So, yeah. IllFonic fucking sucks. I think they are actually worse than some of the other people who have attempted to make their own asymmetrical horror games. I remember this one called Home Sweet Home Survive, which of course was an asymmetrical horror game, which was actually based off of some old Taiwanese survival horror game that I actually played back in my golden years of playing indie horror games back on my old Xbox One. And I was actually kind of pleased with it. It looked good. It had some fun, promising stuff in it, but of course it fell apart like every other asymmetrical horror game. And I think another thing that kills these games is also just a lack of interest. It's the lack of having a fun and genuinely exciting premise. As much important it is as having fun gameplay, you also want to have a fun premise. You want to have a fun concept for an asymmetrical horror game. You want to have one that's interesting, one that keeps people coming back, and one that gets people in the first place. You know, it's also just a lack of interest. It's a lack of enthusiasm. It's a lack of excitement. It's a lack of something that genuinely just is interesting in general. You know, a lot of these asymmetrical horror games are just so poorly made. They're also made with such a lack of creativity that lack of creativity leads to the developers making a game that is just not very interesting because of their lack of creativity and originality. And then when the game comes out, obviously the players will play it for a while, and then they'll just get tired of it, of all the shit that's in it. Or they'll get... Another thing, actually, is... Let's say a horror game, an asymmetrical horror game, actually is balanced. If they get the balancing right, they fuck up on the other things that are essential, and that's a lack of genuinely fun updates and a lack of content. That will kill and shoo away an asymmetrical horror games community just as fast, if not faster, than a lack of balance in the gameplay, actually. Just thought of that. And I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why Gun Media is so obsessed with making asymmetrical horror games based off of already well-established, beloved IPs. That's probably another reason why, because them and IllFonic have a lack of creativity to make a genuinely fun premise for an asymmetrical horror game in general. So yeah, that's my reasons as to why I think asymmetrical horror is always dying, and why those are my methods on how I would fix it. But that's why I believe asymmetrical horror is always dying. Another reason could also be the community. There's always going to be communities in these games that are just going to be toxic pieces of shit. There's always going to be. There's never not going to be. And I think a lack of moderation could also lead to people feeling less inclined to play your game. It's like I said before, when it comes to a live service game, you want to make sure that the community is happy. You want to make sure that when they turn on their PlayStation, their Xbox, what was it called? Xbox Series L. Their Xbox Series L, because it's an L console, or PC, if they're part of the Supreme Master Race, whatever they're playing on, whatever platform they're playing on, you want to make sure that whatever they're playing on, they all have one thing in common, and that's they're playing your game. Whether they're on Sexbox, GayStation, Steam Deck, whatever it's called, Nintendo Switch 2, if they're playing your game, especially with crossplay, if they're all playing your game, if you have a player base divided by the platforms they're on and the regions, that right there is how you can tell that you have officially made a successful live service or asymmetrical horror in this situation game. So yeah, if you don't have that going for you, then you should probably work on it. But yeah, I'm not buying that Halloween game. I know exactly what Gun Media is doing. They are going to make game after game based off of these 90s horror films that are still loved by people. After they fuck up Halloween, they're probably, I'm going to say my guess, they're probably going to move on to Ghostface and the Scream franchise. And that's because the Scream franchise is actually still making quite a bit of money. And also they're still making new films in the Scream franchise. So they're probably going to move on to Scream after Halloween. Then maybe Nightmare on Elm Street, but maybe not actually, because Nightmare on Elm Street, the IP of Nightmare on Elm Street is actually having some problems. So after Halloween and Scream, they'll maybe move on to Child's Play. Let's see, maybe Child's Play, maybe another Evil Dead game perhaps, because they're making more Evil Dead films. Gun Media is focused on one thing, and that's making as much money off of a gullible community as possible. They want a gullible audience, and they will use the cheapest methods to appeal to that gullible audience. So they'll do lots of shit like that. But yeah, after they make this Halloween game, and after it inevitably falls apart like every other asymmetrical game, they'll just move on to the next one. And you see, the thing is, besides how tragic the asymmetrical horror genre is, the community is even more tragic. Because so many horror fans are gullible, and they're gullible because they just want to play a fun multiplayer horror game with their fellow horror fan buddies. I'm literally exactly what I just described. As a horror fan, I love talking and I love being around people who are also in the same community, in the same fan group as I am, or the same fandom, I guess you can say. I don't know if horror is a fandom, I don't know. And even I was gullible at one point. I'm not buying that Halloween game. I swear to God, I'm not buying that Halloween game. If anyone wants to see gameplay of it on this channel, the only way I will play that Halloween game is if someone gets it for me, or if it goes on sale for less than $10. If not, then I'm not buying that game. I'm not. And like I was saying earlier, them saying that the game is going to have single player now to kind of distract people from the fact that they literally neglected and abandoned TCM and then killed it in the same year. They'll probably, the reason why they wanted IllFonic to give the Halloween game a single player mode is because that might distract people. They'll be like, oh, If the game fails, at least it'll have a single player mode. And you want to know what fucking confuses me? The Ghostbusters game and the Killer Clowns game, both games by IllFonic, by the way, both of those games are still on. I think the Ghostbusters game and the Killer Clowns game, they barely get any updates at all, but IllFonic still updates them occasionally, and surprisingly, they haven't announced the closure of these games, so I don't know what the fuck IllFonic is doing. IllFonic, Gun Media is the evil mastermind behind all of this, but IllFonic are the ones who are creating these games. Besides the people who made TCM, IllFonic are the bad guys as well. Because they're the ones who make these garbage-ass games. They're worse, almost as worse, as the developers of TCM. Both the ones who started development and the ones who were replaced. The ones who replaced them. Because TCM did have a change in developers at some point in its lifetime, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, man, it's lack of creativity as well. Like, if these asymmetrical horror game devs, if they had any creativity, then these games also wouldn't be as bland as they are. Because besides TCM and Evil Dead, those were the only two that actually did have pretty fun gameplay at some point. They had fun gameplay at some points. Some aspects were fun, the mechanics were fun, but those were the only two. Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters, the Killer Clowns game, and the Predator game. All three of those games, again, all three of those games were made by IllFonic. Their gameplay, unlike TCM and Evil Dead, which had potential in terms of how fun their gameplay was and how decent it was, Evil Dead and TCM, those games were made by separate developers, actually. Evil Dead was not made by Gun Media or the devs of TCM. That was made by Saber Interactive. IllFonic made both Ghostbusters, the Killer Clowns game, and the Predator game. All three of those games had pretty lackluster gameplay in the first place. And that's the thing about IllFonic. IllFonic, just like so many other of these asymmetrical horror game devs, IllFonic is extremely lazy. They're lazy, they're incompetent, they don't have that creativity and the dedication to stick by the games that they make, and they don't maintain, they don't even give them fun gameplay in general. None of the games that IllFonic has made had the fun potential gameplay that TCM and Evil Dead had. And I am aware that IllFonic did make Friday the 13th, but I'm pretty sure it was different people. I'm pretty sure everyone that was involved in the creation of Friday the 13th, I'm pretty sure they left IllFonic. I highly doubt that it's the same people. If it is, then, oh boy, that is a major fall from grace. Because the Ghostbusters game and the Killer Clowns game, the Killer Clowns was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. It was all right, but the Ghostbusters game fucking sucked. The Predator game fucking sucked. And surprisingly, again, all three of these games also do have some people playing them. And another thing that's sad is after these games die, the only people left playing them are those who still love them. Those who were able to enjoy the potential that they had, the small little fun potential that they had, whether it be in the gameplay or the mechanics or whatever. Or just fans who are, people who are fans of the IP. I'm sure the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game will still appeal to fans who love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the IP specifically. Like, if you love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then you'll probably love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game just because you love the franchise. So that's another thing that's so sad about these games. Like, after Gun Media and IllFonic and whoever they have working on them, after they're done making all their money off of them and after they're all soaked up and used, the only ones who will continue to play them are those who still love the franchise that they're based on. It's genuinely sad. It really is. But yeah, anyways, guys, to wrap things up, the asymmetrical horror genre is a sad one. It's a sad one because I know for a fact that if we can get a developer, a studio, to have just a little more dedication and a little more passion and creativity, and also just a pinch of love and care for whatever asymmetrical horror game they attempt to make, I know that they could probably make a pretty damn fine one. One that would be fun, enjoyable, terrifying, just like how any horror game should be, especially if it's a multiplayer one. But as long as we have studios like IllFonic and publishers like Gun Media, that is never going to happen. You see, let me tell you something about Gun Media. They do not give a single shit about how their chosen studio makes the game that they secured the rights for. You know, whether it was TCM or this upcoming Halloween game, they don't care. Gun Media does not give a single shit about how the game goes. All their role involves is just getting the rights to the IP, hiring a studio to develop it. In this case, it's going to be IllFonic, and that's it. They don't care about how the game actually goes. They don't care how it's made. They don't care how well or how poorly the developers make it. If the developers of TCM actually did a good job with TCM, and if they didn't completely fuck everything up and neglect it like they did, like the fucking pieces of shit they did, then I bet TCM would still be going strong. Because the game actually did manage to secure a pretty dedicated player base, which is still here actually. So if they would have tried just a little harder, if they could have overcame that incompetence and all that laziness, TCM would still be going strong probably. Maybe not strong, but maybe it could have gotten to that point. I don't know. It wouldn't have been dead, that's for sure. Anyways, guys, to wrap this video up, the asymmetrical horror genre is probably not going to change anytime soon, unfortunately, because IllFonic and Gun Media are just going to continue polluting this genre up with games that they will treat like shit, make like shit, and then neglect like pieces of shit, and then the game will just die. I mean, how many dead asymmetrical horror games do we already have at this point? We've got Friday, which, well, I don't think we count Friday because that game was a success. Okay, Friday was a success, so that means we count TCM, Evil Dead, Killer Clowns, Ghostbusters, the Predator game. That's 5 right there, and that's not even counting some of the ones on Steam. Those are just the ones that came on console, so there's even more than that. So yeah, this is a tired, sad, depressing genre, one that'll probably never get better because there's just too much fucking incompetence. We've got too many developers that are just way too fucking lazy. We've got lazy, incompetent developers who are focused way too much on either making as much money as possible from, out of all things, in-game cosmetics, of course, the stereotypical cliche of every greedy game developer, or just too much laziness, and of course they're not creative enough to actually make a fun concept for an asymmetrical game. If they're too lazy and incompetent to even maintain the fucking thing, then how could they have enough creativity to even make a fun concept in the first place? Because they're too fucking lazy. It's their laziness. It all stems from their laziness. That's why they can't do anything right. So yeah, I'm not buying that Halloween game, and I don't think you guys should either. I know that Halloween fans galore will buy it, and they'll probably be satisfied with it at first. Maybe they won't, I don't know. But I'm not buying it. I ain't buying that Halloween game, and I don't think you guys should either. I mean, how much convincing do you people need at this point? How much do you need? I mean, and who knows how much the game is going to cost. There's probably going to be a standard edition, which is going to be about $40, and it'll come with absolutely none of the in-game cosmetics that Gun Media and IllFonic is already going to insert in the game before it even fucking launches. It'll launch with it. There'll be a standard edition for $40. There'll be a premium edition for probably $50, I want to say, either $50 or $60. That'll come with a couple of in-game cosmetics, and then there'll probably be the super ultimate edition, which will come with a season pass, so you can have access already to a plethora of other useless garbage cosmetics they're going to add in the future, which you'll already have access to, which will cost you around $69.99 or maybe $79.99. $69.99 if they're feeling generous. But yeah, I'm not buying that Halloween game. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how much shit they say about it. I don't care about the fact it's going to have a single player mode. I do not give two shits. They can tell me that a Laurie Strode lookalike will come straight to my house and give me the best blowjob any woman can give me, and I still will not buy that shit. Okay? And I'm a big fan of Halloween, okay? It was one of the first slasher franchise I ever got into as a kid, so obviously I love the franchise. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it. The Halloween game will be just another franchise that Gun Media will get their grubby little hands on, make a shitty game based off of it, and then just run away with the money when the game eventually falls apart. That's all they're going to do. Now, one thing I will say before I leave and before I get done with this video is, if you guys don't already know, we are actually getting a Hellraiser game coming later this year. Now, when I first saw the announcement of this game, I was like, oh shit, they got their hands on another one. But when I found out that it's actually going to be a single-player driven narrative based off of Hellraiser, my attention was immediately given to this game and its developer. Surprisingly enough, it's actually made by Saber Interactive, who were the same people who kind of did the same thing to Evil Dead that what Gun Media did to TCM, so I was a little iffy. I still hold a bit of a grudge against Saber for what they allowed happen to Evil Dead, because Evil Dead could have been such a fun game. But it's single player. This is a Hellraiser game. Full on. This is full-on Hellraiser game that is going to be single player. And by the looks of the gameplay, it looks like it's going to be more like Outlast, it looks like. It's first-person survival horror. And honestly, I really hope that this upcoming Hellraiser game, people, make this game successful. Buy this game if you are a horror fan. Even if you don't like Hellraiser, just buy the fucking game. Because if we can start a new trend with this Hellraiser game, we can start a trend of new single-player horror games based off of these older horror franchises. And hopefully this will put a lot more pressure on Gun Media to either do better or just stop making asymmetrical horror games based off of these IPs. Because let's be honest, it's a lot easier to make a good single-player game than it is to make an asymmetrical horror game and then maintain it afterwards. Especially if it's a passionate game developer. If it's a genuinely passionate and a good creative game developer who are making these kinds of, hopefully, new single-player horror games based off of these franchises, then that'll start a new trend. We have the power to do it. Make this Hellraiser game successful. Show the developers that we want more of this instead of more of that. And I think we can actually start a new trend here of genuinely good, fully polished, and well-made, genuinely good horror games based off of these older horror movies. And Hellraiser is a great franchise. Like, I didn't get into Hellraiser that much, but I still like it. I saw the first film and I saw the second, and I liked it. So, you know, it's not about that. It's more about the fact that we can start a new trend here, and if we can get Gun Media shut down, even if we can put an end to their company and IllFonic as well, I think that would be great as well. As long as IllFonic and Gun Media is gone, that is all that matters. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys so very much for watching. This was the longest discussion video right here on YouTube's horror section. I don't think I've ever made a video this long before. And I made this video to kind of make up for me kind of starving you guys for content for so long. And I did release a couple of Dying Light gameplay videos a little while back, but it's been a long time since I've made a discussion video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, like I said, this was the longest one I have ever made for quite a while, and this is the longest one on the channel. At least I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. It's pretty long. So if you guys actually stuck by all the way till the end, if you are still here, and if you watched literally from beginning to end, thank you so very much. I have no idea how you managed to do it, but thank you so very much. I genuinely appreciate you being interested in hearing what I had to say and just hearing all of my rambling about, you know, the asymmetrical horror genre and Gun Media and TCM and all this other crap. Thank you so very much. That, like, for real, like, I'm genuinely thank you. That really means a lot. if you are still here right now till the very end, and if you didn't skip all the way forward to the end, and even if you did, whatever. Just I appreciate you stopping by anyways. I appreciate whatever I can get, whether it's big or small. I appreciate whatever I get, and I appreciate you guys more than anything. So, thank you all so very much for hearing everything I had to say. And even if you didn't, it's fine. Be sure to let me know down below in the comments, what did you think about this discussion video? What do you think about the topic discussed here in this discussion video? I would love to talk to you guys as well. I love interacting with my community. And stick around for the end, because we're going to do a quick little reaction, actually, to the Halloween game trailer. And I'll give my thoughts and opinions on it as well. So this is a pretty big video. I hope you guys appreciate it. Anyways, thank you guys so very much for everything. I love you guys so very much. And thank you for stopping by once again to YouTube's horror section. I will see you guys in the next discussion video, next gameplay video, whatever it may be. I will see you guys in general. And yeah, take care, guys, and peace out. All right, y'all, we are here. So, I haven't watched all of this trailer yet because I was actually saving my genuine reaction in preparation for this discussion video. So, I've seen it up to here. So I've seen a bit of a larger chunk of the full trailer, but not all the way. So yeah, this is going to be my genuine reaction to this trailer for the upcoming Halloween game. So yeah, let's get into it. Camera quality's terrible, I know. I apologize.
A quiet town. Just like hundreds of other small towns all across America. A town just like yours. But it was here on October 31st, 1963. No motive, no warning, no provocation, just senseless death. I met him 15 years ago. I thought there was hope, that he could be reached. But what I met was not a child, no emotion, perhaps not even human. 15 years later, he returned home. What happened that night was only the beginning. It wasn't just a killing spree, it was a reckoning. You can't stop him. You can't reason with him. You can't kill the boogeyman.
Okay, what the actual fuck is that Donald Pleasance impression? At this point, I think they should have used AI. I actually think they should have used AI. Whoever the hell they got to voice Dr. Loomis in this game, I mean, it doesn't sound awful, but he's pushing way too hard to sound exactly like Donald Pleasance. I don't like it. I really don't like it. Okay, so here's the bonus part of this video. A little extra discussion, I guess you can say. Okay, so besides the awful Donald Pleasance impression, the one thing I will say about IllFonic and Gun Media is, you know, I'll give some credit where credit is due. The way that both this game looks so far and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I can appreciate the fact that these games did pay tribute and look exactly like and feel exactly like the iconic movies that both of these games are based on. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre game did feel exactly like the movie. It had the vibe, the atmosphere, and of course it did pay tribute to a lot of the things that that movie had going for it. I could appreciate that. You know, I could also appreciate them paying respect. They did pay respect to the source material as well of TCM, and it looks like they will be doing the same thing with the Halloween game. The source material is important. Like, if you have a game that is based off of an iconic movie, especially if it's part of the horror genre, whether it be Halloween, TCM, or whatever other movie they're gonna have their next game based on. Respecting the material and paying tribute to it and trying to recapture that atmosphere and vibe and even the colors is definitely important. So it does have respect, at least for, the film and the characters and the franchise that these games are based on. And for that, I could give some appreciation for Gun Media and Ilphonic. Now, just a little extra 2 cents. It did say a single player and multiplayer horror experience. So when it comes to the single player, because that's what I'm mostly focused on. Now, if I was involved, if I was like the writer, the main lead for developing this game, if I was going to be in charge of the single player experience, this is how I would do it. So for single player, there would be options where you would play as both the iconic Shape, Michael Myers, and then there would be a other single player mode where it's more survival horror based. Remember the virtual cabin from Friday the 13th? I would kind of expand on that. So basically, it would be like a more terrifying survival horror base where it would be in first person and it would basically work just like your typical survival horror game, except for you're being chased and stalked by Michael Myers. And I would also kind of bring in the AI from the Alien Isolation game. The AI that is controlling Michael Myers would be able to adapt to your movements. It would be able to kind of predict where you would go if it could, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I would add a bunch of mechanics. Obviously, I'm not going to say all of it here because I don't want some of my ideas to be stolen. Because I do plan on making my own game one day. I don't want you guys to kind of I don't want people to copy me. But I would give you an idea. I'm giving you an idea of what I would do. I would make it a tense survival horror game if I was the main lead developer of this game. And of course, when you'd be playing as Michael Myers, instead of taking inspiration from Alien Isolation, it would be the opposite when you'd be playing as Michael Myers. I would almost make it like a single player Dead by Daylight experience where it would be in first person, of course, and you would just be stalking and hunting down the AIs. But I would make it to where the AI would be realistic, and so would the actual survivors. I would have this little twisted mechanic where they would actually beg for mercy. Kind of remember how in The Last of Us when you would kill, or when there would be one guy left and they would just be getting on their knees and begging for mercy. I would go full on twisted mayhem when you'd be playing as Michael Myers. But that's just how I would do it. I have no idea how they're going to do it themselves. Obviously, I'm not Gun Media, and I'm not Ilphonic. I'm not a game developer yet. You guys have to wait for me to make some banger-ass horror games. But until then, it's probably just going to be like how it was in Friday the 13th. It's just going to be you playing as Michael Myers and doing a bunch of challenges and single-player levels that are in the same maps that the multiplayer maps are going to be in. Just typical shit like that. And of course, there'll be perks and there'll be maps. And one thing I actually forgot to say about perks is, in an asymmetrical horror game, when it comes to perks, they have this problem where instead of perks being used to help you survive if you're playing as a survivor, or perks to help you kill people more efficiently if you're playing as killer, when they add perks in these games, they just make you do a bunch of clutch shit. They just help you do other things rather than helping you survive. If you're playing as a survivor, then the perk should be used to help you survive, not do a bunch of other weird, overpowered shit, or just annoying shit. They should help you be more quiet, more stealthy. They should have stealth perks, perks to help you survive better, things like that. No perks that make you overpowered, because having overpowered perks in these games is so annoying for both sides. And that's why Dead by Daylight has that problem with perks, because in Dead by Daylight there's clutch perks for killers that are going against clutch perks that survivors may or may not be bringing. So as a survivor, the killer might have a clutch perk that fucks you over, or as a killer, the survivor might have a clutch perk that fucks you over. And unless you don't have a clutch perk to counter their clutch perk, it's just clutch perks countering clutch perks at that point. So when they do add perks in this game, which they are inevitably going to do, I really hope that they don't do that, because that would be super, super annoying. Because Dead by Daylight has that exact problem, and it's so fucking annoying. You've got killer perks on the killer side that are annoying for survivors to face, and they've got perks on their side and perks on the killer side, and at that point, it's your perk. It's a matter of your perk either being better than my perk and you counter me, or my perk is better than your perk and I counter you, or our perks just counter each other. It's just so annoying. I don't like it. It's annoying. Ever since Dead by Daylight, the idea of perks in one of these games just, it ticks me off. It really does. So if they're gonna add perks. We all know they are. There's gonna be perks. There's gonna be classes. Hopefully, it'll just be perks that just help each side survive and kill more efficiently. Hopefully, none of that clutch ass, survivor BS or killer BS. Like, I don't want overpowered perks on either side, whether it's the killer side or the survivor side. But anyways, that's my 2 cents on this Halloween game. The vibe and the atmosphere, it does pay tribute to Halloween. It does have that classic Halloween movie sense, which is good. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this extra tidbit of this video. And let me know down below, what do you think? How does this look so far to you? Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And yeah, anyways, I will see you guys in the next video coming soon. And yeah, take care, y'all, and peace out.